How's it going? It's me once again. I'm just here to extend the saga, to add another part to the story. Although it's definitely not going to be the end. People ask me about it. I usually just say it's a long story, which it is. Very long. Last YouTube channel was like 5 or 6 hours of this talking nonsense. All deleted now. But right off the bat, I want to address two things. Number one is my accent. You may have, you may think of me in a certain way, or judge me in a certain way because of my accent, vowel speak. The ditzy sort of like blonde Californian type accent. I'm actually from the valley where that accent originated from. So growing up, that's how I communicated. And I try to distance myself from it, but when I deal with things, I address things, I talk about things that are emotional or traumatizing or serious to me, sometimes I'll revert to that sort of lingo, that accent. So I apologize ahead of time if you think I'm some stoner surfer guy or something. It's just because of where I live. And number two, I did see a video about a guy from a guy named Andy Nowicki, I think it was called. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I think it's Polish. Talking about my first video, which is interesting to see somebody that actually watched it. And yeah, I'm grateful to him for believing me, because what I'm telling you essentially is a story about me being kidnapped by agents of a corporation, taken to another state where I was used as slave labor and sexually exploited in order to enrich stockholders for an investment firm on Wall Street, which is quite a stretch of the imagination. But it's not really that crazy if you understand the lay of the land and the way things operate in this country and the political climate. I would hate to be an alien abductee and try to convince people of that or explain that, because that'd be a lot more difficult than this, and this is already as hard as it is, you know. But getting into the story, is following sort of the same format as I left off on my other channel before it all got deleted. First, I got dropped off at that place, which I explained in the first video. The second part, I mean, this is just leading into it, you know. You're there. The first night, you're throwing up. It's a living nightmare. You don't sleep the whole night. You're puking. You feel like hell. You're absolutely dying. You probably don't sleep the whole night, maybe not for 2 days or 3 days, who knows. You know, it's like you're up every 30. Well, first of all, what they do is when you sleep there, you sleep outside on the ground, and one of the counselors actually sleeps on top of you. As weird as that sounds. Like you sleep, and then an adult sleeps on top of your body. while you sleep. So every time you move, like if you want to escape or whatever, then they'll know. But also, I'm sure that they were getting some satisfaction from that in another way. But pretty much, you're getting up every 30 minutes, to puke your guts out or shit your brains out. And I apologize for using so many, swear words, but when I describe, when I talk about something that's really negative or really ugly, I use ugly language. I can't help it. I try to. But anyway, you're puking your guts out. You're taking a shit constantly. When you go to the bathroom in any way, when you take a piss or you take a number two or whatever, you use something that some people in some hobbies or in the military, whatever, you may be familiar with, called a wag bag. It's like a bag that's self-sealing that you defecate or urinate into, and you seal it and you carry it with you, like to leave no trace that you had ever been there. So if you had gone to the bathroom on the ground, like if you had just dropped your pants and just, taken a dump on the ground, then somebody would find the human feces and they would know that somebody is out here or whatever. So you go inside of a bag which you're made to tie around yourself and carry with you for like days or sometimes like weeks until they come to collect them. So you're like, marching like very brutal, like baton death march, and you have human feces dangling in your face, like pounds of it, pounds of human feces. I mean, over the course of like 5-6 days, like how much that you excrete from your body, carrying that like over your shoulder where it's slapping you in the face and stuff. Thank God it's frozen because it's so cold. But that's the reality. And when I talk about distance, time, weight, things like this, measurements, I am being very approximate because it's not like I had a scale out there. I had no compass. I had no watch. I had no thermometer. So everything is just my estimation, of the situation based on the best, information I had available at the time based on my faculties, which were not always in the best shape, I'll admit. Uh, when you're out there right away, you go out there, black SUV, bag taken off your head, your first night of puking, being screamed at and abused. The very next day you march. Every day you march, except for maybe, I forget if it was Saturday or Sunday or something. It works in the same way, similar way, like a long range reconnaissance patrol would work in the military, where like over the course of several days you're moving, you're hiking, the distance could be between 10 and 30 miles. It varies so much because of the type of terrain that you're going over. Sometimes it can be mostly flat. Other people familiar with Bend, Oregon, know that it's very mountainous in parts, very rugged, very brutal terrain. And so it can be very slow going. So the distance is not always, the same each time. What you would do is you would travel a day, set up a camp, or if you want to call it a camp. I mean, what pretty much you slept on the floor, and it snows at nighttime. So if you sleep outside while it's snowing like that, you will be buried alive as you sleep. So what you have to do is you have to get a piece of tarpaulin, some sort of, fabric, whatever, and you have to attach it, you have to anchor it in a certain way in a 45-degree angle above where you're sleeping. So when the snow falls at, nighttime when you're sleeping, it diverts, it slides off to the either side of you and creates these like mountains on either side of you. If you leave a divot or if you leave a impression on the top of the shelter thing that you're using to cover yourself with, uh, snow can build up on top of that. Eventually, it will collapse. You'll be buried under snow like an avalanche in the middle of the night, maybe like 2 in the morning. Um, and that is a definite possible fatality. I mean, you're talking about a place where if you have to go to the hospital, if you have a serious problem, there is no ambulance. No ambulance can't, well, will be able to make it out there in time. If they could not traverse those type of roads and terrain in time or at all. Your only option is helicopter. So if you're very seriously injured, like you're going to die, it will be a helicopter. If they feel generous enough to call one, which they never have, they never will. That's about an hour journey, probably I would say. Because I'm going off, like a general helicopter max speed, maybe 140, 160 miles an hour, 1 hour. I'd say the nearest hospital is probably about that far away, between 120, 160 miles. So you're fucked. If you have some serious issue, you're totally screwed. You're dead. Um, the hikes like that I talk about or whatever, where you move from one area to another, and you set up these camps or these I don't know what you call them. It's not even a camp. It's really just a resting place. Eventually you'll set up a more main area, like a more, something that has like a campfire and sort of a structure to it. Excuse me. Sort of a structure to it. Instead of just being, sleeping on the ground, like out, whatever. Um, sometimes if it was raining or there was some sort of problem like that, we would dig trenches to divert water, for like flooding and stuff like that, all sorts of stuff. But anyway, a lot of people they cannot deal with this when they first get there. Um, the physical pressure, mental, emotional, put on them in order to get through these hike. Well, to call it a hike, it sounds like some leisurely thing. Death march. I mean, you got like 40, 50 pounds or whatever on your back. A lot of these people, they're not physically fit. Some of them are addicted to stuff like heroin, which they're coming off. They're having withdrawals. Some of them have legitimate medical issues, asthma, heart conditions, so on and so forth. No mercy at all. If you, how I can describe movement would generally be like a platoon moving in Vietnam or whatever, like any war, but if you think of like the movie Platoon, like in the very beginning, where they're like all walking in a column formation, like through the jungle, and they're just like suffering and like whatever. That's like the type of uh, general like zeitgeist, I guess you could say, of the situation. I mean, there are people that were collapsing, and not from mental weakness. You know, it's easy to say, oh, they're weak, they're, you know, pussies or whatever. They're not, you know, man enough to take it or whatever. It's not about that at all. It's like a physical limit that you reach, like a physical medical exhaustion. The definition of, like if you've ever seen a I Shouldn't Be Alive episode and you hear about some guy who crashed in a plane in Botswana and he's been walking for 4 days looking for help and he just fucking collapses. It's not because the guy doesn't want to live. It's his body, physically has just given out. So there'd be people who their bodies would give out and they would collapse and they would just tear them apart. I mean, you think the Marine Corps recruit training is bad. This is like a whole other level. Because typically in recruit training, they don't kill you, murder you, or whatever. The drill instructor. But they, somebody, like, let's say they fall down or they're unable to continue. They immediately, half a second, you'll have three guys like up in their face, screaming in their face, like hitting them, pushing them, get up, get up, get up, get up, like, just torturing the shit out of them. And they'll, like, this guy, I mean, it's plain for anybody to see. For me to see that this guy has had it. And they'll do group punishment. The hope is if they punish us, that we'll take it out on this guy, like in Full Metal Jacket on that big fat private pile or something. Like we'll torture this guy for them because he created a problem for us, or something like that. It's very sick. But nobody sees it like that. It's like you hit your limit and that's it. And that's how they ended up killing that kid. That was that homicide investigation they opened up and then shut down. That's what they did to this kid. He was physically at his limit, and they tortured him, got up in his face, and started hitting him, beating him, until he had a cardiac arrest and he died. They murdered him. So that's how that's dealt with. And there's no excuse, there's no exceptions whatsoever. If you fall or if you lag behind, if you walk too slow, then you're getting an ass whooping. And there's apologize, I have to take a drink, talking this long, but another thing they would do there, well, it was a thing that they used in supposedly the concentration camps in Nazi Germany in World War II, in the gulags of the Soviet Union during the reign of Joseph Stalin, and during the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia during the genocide, and a lot of countries, but I mean these are the pioneers. What this technique basically involves is you have a group of prisoners or a group of people that are under your control. If they're insubordinate, or if they, for whatever reason, it could be anything, like walking too slow, having the wrong tone of voice, looking the wrong direction, having what they think is a bad attitude, you'll be made to find a rock off the ground and put it in your pocket. Now, this doesn't sound so bad, but you're not allowed to take the rock out of your pocket until a guard explicitly tells you to do so. If you try to do so before you're given permission, then you'll be made to put 2 rocks. Now, 2 rocks, 4 rocks, 6 rocks. All right, that's kind of a pain in the butt. Adding a lot of pain, hardship, a weight to you, maybe even damaging you physically. Wait till you get up to like 50 or 60 or 70. That's torturing to death. That's how they would torture people to death in communist countries or supposedly in Nazi Germany. And they did that to little kids. Pretty crazy. And there's, when I talk about guards, there's these people. You can think of it like this, if you want to think of it in military terms. You have your platoon, you have your platoon leader, and you have like an executive officer or something, Like let's say you got like a first and a second lieutenant or something like that. Now, it's like 2 or 3 of these guys, these guards, counselors, whatever term you want to apply to them. And then you got like however many kids. And these guys are all, they're either ex-military, ex-police, or ex-criminal. One of the 3. There's no exceptions, really. Very few, actually. And they have one of 3 goals by working for this company in this capacity. The first goal, which is the most understandable, is that they want to get paid for being out in nature and just sort of hanging out in the wilderness of Oregon and get paid like a bunch of money by this company. They don't know what that entails and, non-disclosure agreements and what they have to witness. So there's a high turnover rate with those people who think they're just going to go out on some camping adventure they get paid for. And then number 2, you have the people who don't give a shit about the outdoors or the wilderness, who just want to get paid. And then you have number 3, which is the people who don't care about getting paid at all, who would do it for free, and who are there because they are in a remote area where there is no law enforcement, and they have the total control over the lives of a bunch of minors that they can abuse physically and sexually. There are some people like that in the world. It's when you go through your life in a normal capacity, normal life, you go to high school, go to college, have a job, whatever, your odds of running into somebody like that that you can recognize in such an overt fashion is probably pretty low. People in the workplace might have some of these attributes and stuff like that, causing suffering or seeing people cry, stuff like that, but not to the extreme of like a child murderer, serial rapist, like in federal prison. Those type of guys are like on a whole other plateau, like a whole other level with their mental and thought processes and their just the way that they operate, their modus operandi. There are people like this in the world, and I had to realize this as a 15-year-old that there are people out there that are, what you could essentially call demons, sociopaths, psychopaths, whatever you want to call them. They derive pleasure from the suffering of other people, and well, it's one thing, to see the suffering of an adult that's traumatizing enough for the degradation of, but to see it done to a child is a whole other ballgame. And you have people that enjoy this aspect of it because a child is more likely to cry. A child is more likely to break down. They're more malleable, easier to torture. So these people know that and they take advantage of that in order to fulfill their, you know, desires. So there's this one guy there. His name, well, first of all these people use code names. None of them use their real name because obviously they're afraid that somebody is going to track them down later on and kill them for what they've done. You're also given a code name, actually, later on. How it works is when you first arrive, your name is taken away. You're given a number, like 14, let's say. So every time you go to the bathroom, you use one of those wag bags or whatever where you got to walk 20 yards away. Every 3 seconds you have to yell, or every 5 seconds, like your number, which, like 14, 14, 14, 14, 14. You have to keep saying that, like as you take number 2 or number 1 or whatever. If you just don't say that or stop saying that, that's an instant beatdown. So there are people I have heard of, that I know of, that are so mentally traumatized, messed up from this, that they are like 30, 40 years old, have families, have kids. They'll get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and they will scream out their number as they take a piss, like half awake. Like 14, 14, 14, like screaming that in the middle of the night in their house as their wife and their kids wonder what the hell's going on. Pretty disturbing to witness. But after a while, once you've earned like the trust or like the privilege, you're given a new name like them. And like their names that they use, or code names, are stuff like Painted Sage or Desert Rain or Laughing Coyote, or there's just like a bunch of different, just arbitrary like shit like that. Stuff that sounds kind of Native American. It's like cultish type titles. And you're not allowed to. Number one, they do not refer to each other by their real names in front of you. And you are not allowed to refer to someone who has a code name by their real name if you know it, or you will be punished. So I'll explain more about that later, including how I got my code name and what I had to go through in order to get it. But that's for another video, because God, these things are long. It feels like giving a State of the Union address. I gotta keep taking a drink every couple of minutes, you know what I mean? These pretzels are making me thirsty. But anyway, these guys, there's one incident that I'll say right off the bat, because people, it's hard to, the only thing I can equate it to two things. The place where I was at and the experience, I would equate only to a prisoner of war camp. Number two is the things that you witness, go through, experience, see, the loss, the pain, the struggle that you feel is really not unlike war. And it's very profoundly troubling and disturbing, Because like, think about it like this: you're in the Hanoi Hilton or something. Some guy gets brought in next to you. He says, "Hey, I'm a Navy aviator. I got shot down over Da Krong or whatever, and my name is Joe Smith, or whatever." And you get to know the guy. Maybe you never even see him. You got a wall between yourselves, but you trade life stories. You talk about girlfriends, wives, hopes, dreams, your whole life, your family, stuff like that. Then maybe one day they come in, they take that guy out into the yard, and they shoot him in the back of the head with an AK-47. You'll never see him again. It's not unlike what it's like at this place. There's a guy that story time. There's a guy that I made friends with everybody. There's nobody that was against me. Nobody. None of the prisoners, at least. But there's this one guy in particular that I remember. He's a Hispanic guy from Texas. And I remember, they will talk all sorts of nasty stuff about you that isn't true. Like for me, for instance, they said I destroyed my family, that I caused my parents to have a divorce, that what else did they accuse me of doing? Causing my parents turmoil, making them, I don't know, something like that. Destroying their lives, destroying their property, something like that. I don't know. But the reality is, my parents were destructive, alcoholics, drug addicts. These people destroyed my life. They destroyed their own lives. They were in jail. They were charged with DUIs. They were charged with crimes. These people drove me to school while they were drunk, got arrested. I didn't do anything to these people. I wasn't the drug addict. I wasn't the alcoholic. Those are my parents. And because I'm troubled by this fact, I'm disturbed. Now, this is my reward. I'm here now. So what they said about this, and this is that's all bullshit, of course. So this guy, they say, yeah, he was in a gang, and he was in Texas, and he was smuggling drugs across the border, and he was blah, 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 blah. He was falling in with the wrong crowd and all this shit. But I saw this guy, was not like very far from a hardcore gangbanger. This was this guy that I came to know. Lost, lonely, looking for love, affection, camaraderie, loyalty, friendship, understanding, things that he could not find at home. His dad was an alcoholic, beat the shit out of him and his mom. I guess he found it in the wrong crowd of people, or a gang, or whatever. So the logical thing to do, if I was like running the joint, would be to say, like, listen, kid, you don't need all that stuff. You're worth it on your own. You're a cool guy. You're cool to talk to, and whatever. You're intelligent. Whatever, all this stuff. These people, I guess they don't see it that way. Because what happened is, how things work in this place is that these packs that you carry are heavier than in the military. So what you do is you lay the pack down on the ground. The person lays on top of it. They buckle in. There's a strap at the waist, a strap at the chest, and two straps coming down, from the shoulders, like a regular backpack. Now, person lays down on their back, straps himself in, and then one or two other people help them to their feet so that they get their balance. And once they're on their feet, then they're on their own. If you fall down at any point, you cannot get back up unless if you have somebody else helping you, or you take the pack off, which is obviously a concern when you deal with like cougars, bears, mountain lions, bobcats, whatever the hell's out there, where you need to dump what you have and get away quickly, or if you've fallen down, get up quickly and get away. That's not happening. And I don't know if I explained this already, but if you get injured out here, there is no medical attention. An ambulance, if it could get there, would probably be like a 3-hour trip, 4-hour round trip maybe. That's assuming it can get there. It can't because there are no roads. You need a 4-wheel drive vehicle. So your only option is life flight, like a helicopter. If you're in a serious medical, situation. Average helicopter, flying around a big city or, taking people to the hospital, tops out between like 120, 160 miles an hour. So, from my estimation of where I was, nearest hospital was about that far. So that's about a 2-hour helicopter round trip just to get to the hospital, just to get to the emergency room. So if you have a serious problem out there, to put it plainly, you're fucked. You're on your own. If it can't be solved or fixed or saved then and there, you're dead. That's it. But anyway, this guy that I had made friends with, he was on the ground, laying on his pack, and it was my job. Well, not really my job. It wasn't like they forced me to do it. I was his friend, so I helped him up, And with my right hand, I grab his right hand. He clasps on with his left. I clasp on with my left, and I go to pull him up. I get him up about a 45-degree angle where he's about to pivot from his heels onto his, feet, get his balance. One of these guards, counselors, he comes running up behind me, punches him in the chest, right in the sternum, right in the middle of the chest, as hard as he could. Knocked him to the ground, knocked the wind out of him. Just floored him. And I was standing in shock for a few seconds. I mean, it's, you think when you're in a situation, somebody pulls out a gun or you're in a mass shooting or there's some sort of horrible thing going on, that you're just going to spring into action. It doesn't work like that. It's like you freeze, you take in the information, you analyze the situation. And that's where I was. I was thinking, did he do something to deserve this? Is this, should I intervene? I was frozen, so to speak. I was standing there over the guy. He was on the ground. Adult on top of him, screaming in his face, hitting him. Now, what they do at this place is when you first get there, they pretend like they're your best buddy. That's to earn your trust, or not really pretending they're your best buddy, but they ask you, why are you here? What's made you do all this stuff? What's troubling you in life? What's causing you all this pain? Things like that, That's not to get to know you or to help you out. That's blackmail to be used later against you as leverage or to get you to do what they want. And that's what they used on him. All of his stuff he had told, maybe like weeks earlier about, his dad abusing him, being an alcoholic, his mom being completely an enabler, and just she's getting beat up too, and all this stuff. They're yelling in his face, like, your parents hate you, they wish they never had you might as well kill yourself, you're a waste to the world, you're a detriment to everybody, you're a drain on society, nobody wants you here, like, you have no friends, like, everybody just takes care of you, and you're just like a burden to everybody, why don't you just fucking kill yourself right now, get it over with, save everybody the trouble, like that type of stuff, really hardcore, like, way over the top. And at the same time, they got the guy on the ground, they're hitting him, and every human being, when you see stuff like that, it's in your heart. I mean, most people do. Normal people who are brought up correctly or have some brain in their skull know that that's not right. There's something not right going on here. So at first I tried saying, you're crossing the line. This guy, the guy that was taking him down was a Desert Rain guy who was a sociopath, the psychopath. Like to see people cry, like to see people, in pain, physical, mental, emotional, sexual, whatever. And then there's a second guy that was off, second guard, counselor, maybe 10, 15 feet away. Just had his arms crossed, sort of like a bodyguard, watching over things, making sure like I didn't physically intervene so he could come up behind me. Now, I said to him, I tried to talk sense into this guy who is obviously beyond any definition of sanity that exists in our society. I tried saying, what you're doing is not constructive. What you're doing is torture. You're pushing this guy over the edge. You can see he's already about to crack, and you're pushing him to the point where there might not be any coming back from it. And I'll never forget the words that this guy said to me. Because whenever I hear a cop say it, or somebody, it makes me want to puke on the floor and hit him in the face. He said, "Don't tell me how to do my job," and went back to beating on the kid. So I was confused. I was upset because my friend was on the floor crying. By this time he was crying. They were beating him up and screaming in his face, torturing him with stuff I knew was very like personal to him, very emotional, traumatizing events in his life. So I tried to intervene physically to put myself between this Desert Rain guy and the guy on the ground to try and give him space so he could get up. And then Mr. Muscle, who was standing there the whole time, came up behind me, grabbed me, arms like under my armpits, pulled me back and like held on to me. Made me watch. Well, it didn't make me watch, but held me there. I watched the whole time. So they took this kid apart. I mean, like, piece by piece. Whole ego. All of it. Just gone. And eventually they gave up. They got bored. Left him there on the ground in the snow. I went up to this guy, who I had a connection with. He trusted me. I trusted him. I tried to talk to him. I tried to say, don't listen to these people. These people, they're sick. They're not right. What they say isn't true. It's like you're a worthy person. You're my friend. I care about you. It's like I enjoy talking to you. You help me to feel sane in this place. It's crazy. You're a good guy. Like, you're not like they say you are. It's just that you're put into this situation that you don't know how to get out of. Just don't listen to him. And the guy wasn't even there. It was just the 1,000-yard stare just stared right through me, seeing something that I couldn't see. Very disturbing, like he was already dead. Just nothing behind his eyes, no soul, no ego. Something I hope I never have to see again for the rest of my life. It's like the image of a human being degraded and defeated less than an animal. I mean, it's hard to put into words. It's just an image in my mind. But anyway, that guy, they did that to him because they didn't like his, ostensibly. The real reason, of course, is for that guy's pleasure, but they said he didn't like his attitude, that he moped around too much, he bitched and complained, that he walked too slow, that he didn't carry his weight or whatever, which is all BS. The guy carried like 1.5 men, you know what I mean? And they got rid of that guy. Something happened. I think his grandparents figured out what was going on, and they took him out of that place. He was living with them. Bet he went back to Texas. He was living with them for a couple of days, committed suicide. I don't remember how he did it. Might have shot himself in the head. I remember they sent a letter back to us. We were in these different groups. There's men, there's males, females, and separated into these different groups with code names. So our group, code name Scorpion. So we got this letter that said, it was like a couple of days after this guy had left, like he committed suicide. And I remember the Desert Rain guy, total sociopath, the one who caused all this, the one who tortured him, enjoyed it, loved it, savored it. He was reading it as if he was so sorry and so appalled and so distraught that this could happen. And I just wanted to kill him. To be honest, I was sitting there. Not many people had witnessed the whole events that I described. It was me, maybe like one or two others. I wanted to kill that man. Right there and then. It was so repulsive, disgusting in my mind that an adult 35-year-old whatever man could treat somebody who's 13, 14, something like that, to that point, to humiliate, to torture, to degrade a child until they commit suicide. It just is beyond the comprehension of a normal human being. But these people exist, and they're out there, and they make a lot of money. A lot of money. And that was one of the more disturbing things. It's up there that I had witnessed. There's other stuff that I'll get into in later videos. This is all very long and drawn out. seen too much stuff one lifetime, you know. But I'll tell you straight off the bat, I should have mentioned this in the beginning of the video, what the nature of this place was. It's something called behavioral modification. And this may seem like an abstract jargon or benign term. It's really not. It goes back, the Korean War, 1950s. U.S. government was afraid that the communists had developed mind control. We developed our own mind control program, Project MKUltra, among others. They had prisoners in West Germany from a terrorist group, communist terrorist group called the Red Army Faction, or in Germany, Rote Army Fraction. And that was hardcore terrorists, hardcore communist terrorists that had bombed nightclubs, assassinated politicians in West Germany during the Cold War. They had them in a prison, and they created an entire prison model, or a new model for captives, people under your control, essentially. It's called the Stammheim model or the Stammheim model. You can look it up and find information about it, but essentially this same sort of techniques, this model that they used in this prison to break down these communist terrorists, this was later adapted in the 70s, 80s in every U.S. prison and jail in the entire United States. So, seeking to emulate these sorts of institutions, or maybe just on their own, this organization also applied these techniques. One thing, I'll get into this more later, but one of the techniques used is the impossible task. That would be, to give a practical example from this place, you have a backpack that has toothbrushes, clothes, feces, food, all sorts of different articles inside, hundreds of different articles. You'll be told, unpack everything from the bag, lay it out on the ground in like alphabetical order or whatever, or arbitrary order. And then you have to first you have to have it checked, and then you have to repack every single thing perfectly so it all fits perfectly. And you have to do this within 180 seconds. So it's already physically impossible, even if you're the Flash, even if you're the fastest man on the face of the earth. You cannot do that in 180 seconds. So what you do is you do it over and over again, and you fail over and over again. Every time you fail, you're severely punished, harshly punished, tortured. The point is, you're not supposed to do it. They don't care about you organizing things or doing this or that. It's all to break you down. They'll do it repeatedly, maybe 60 times. And then eventually they'll say, all right, enough of that. And then that's it. Then it's over. Then you just pack up things as leisurely as you want to, and then you start your march, 20, 30 miles over these mountains in the snow, whatever. People crying, people dying, whatever. And so, that's really all I gotta say about that for right now. Unfortunately, I recorded a even better video than this, just beforehand, but I forgot to turn the microphone on. You know, my mind is not totally present when I'm relaying all this stuff. It's like living in a daydream. It's like my mind is in a daydream and I'm trying to explain out loud what I'm seeing in my head. It's not easy. So, yeah, it was a behavioral modification program designed to break down a human being, much like boot camp or recruit training, depending on if you're in the Army or Marine Corps, in order to destroy your ego, your personality, and recreate you as a new human being in the image that they want you to. Much like a cult, much like Scientology or Jonestown or something like that. Totally separated from your family, totally isolated, stripped of your identity or even your name, to create a new individual that benefits the corporation. So, sorry if this sounds a little wacko, but it did happen. Did happen. And there are the documents out there to prove it. You know, I'm sure most people coming into this already have their mind made up. But for those who don't, there's really no benefit to me sitting here, spending an hour or two every day recording myself talk about this long, drawn-out, detailed, fabrication. For what? For 3 cents a click or something? I don't make any money off this channel. It's not monetized at all. I earn nothing from this except for the wrath of a super powerful investment corporation and a couple of police departments and sheriff's departments and also the federal government and the FBI. Other than that, I really don't get much out of it. And I'm sure you can hear me talk. You can't see my face, obviously. This is for very purposeful reasons. This is not an accident. Because there are people out there who would retaliate against me. And you can tell I'm not schizophrenic. I am not insane. I am not some sort of crazy guy. I'm just a pretty normal guy, who's come up against something that he doesn't really understand and can't really comprehend or contend with, which is where most of my problems come from. To this day, I don't know how to process that when you see well, I would get into it in later videos, but changes your views on a lot of things. We'll just leave it at that. I think I've just about run out of water. You can tell I'm pretty parched. I'm just going to cut it off here. I hope this info makes it out there before I take 2 shots in the back of the head like Gary Webb. And I will continue, and I'll tell more about the things that I've seen, things that I've done, things that I've participated in. And what comes out of it, what worth, I don't know. But I hope you all have a good day. I thank you for listening to me ramble, and God bless you. Bye.